The stars were quiet, but the silence felt wrong. In the far edges of the galaxy, traders, scouts, and watch stations noticed strange readings. Energy waves rippled through space, sharp and unnatural, as if something massive was cutting through dimensions. It was not a storm, not a collapse of a star. It was something moving with purpose. At first, the alien rulers ignored it. Across the empires, kings and admirals believed it was only a natural anomaly. But soon the waves grew stronger. Fleets sent out to investigate returned with no answers. Sensors failed, navigation systems went blind, and communication lines fell into static. One by one, the distant border stations went dark. Rumors spread. Whispers carried from star system to star system. Some said an ancient empire had awoken from its tomb world. Others spoke of an unknown predator species rising from the void. But the oldest records hidden deep in alien archives told a different story. They spoke of Earth. Most of the galaxy laughed at the name. Earth was a forgotten cradle, a small world said to have sent explorers into the stars centuries ago before vanishing into silence. The empires had grown in that absence, spreading their armies across star clusters, crushing weak civilizations and building golden thrones upon the broken. To them, humanity was a myth, a people who burned themselves out long ago, but the rumors would not stop. Merchant ships swore they had seen a shadow move across the stars, a shape too vast, too sharp to be natural, a shadow that blocked out suns and drifted like a hunter stalking its prey. The whispers gave it a name: the Battleship. Alien councils met in panic. Was it real? Was it human? What did it mean if Earth had returned? Prideful voices argued that no human ship could threaten the empires of today. Yet beneath their words was fear. Every alien ruler knew their own fleets were built on rivalry and greed. Their kingdoms fought one another, wasting power in endless wars. But if an outsider truly had come, something united, something stronger, they would all be vulnerable. Across the galaxy, the omen grew darker. A patrol fleet near the Veil Nebula reported seeing a silhouette pass by. The fleet's commander swore the ship stretched kilometers in length, a giant blade of metal drifting without sound. When they tried to scan it, their systems overloaded. When they tried to fire warning shots, the shots did not land. They vanished in silence, swallowed by the void. Only one broken transmission made it back to their capital before the fleet disappeared forever. 3 words carried on static: "It is here." Panic spread like fire. Whole star systems closed their borders. Fleets retreated from the edges of space. Some empires blamed one another, believing it was a trick or a weapon unleashed by rivals. Armadas gathered, but none dared move toward the shadow. In the great capital halls of the alien kingdoms, fear lived in silence. Rulers who once commanded trillions stared at the star maps, watching the energy waves grow closer. The omen was not just rumor anymore. The readings were real. Something immense was moving through space, coming nearer with each cycle. A council of 8 empires met in secret. Their halls, carved from crystal and filled with firelight, echoed with nervous voices. Admirals demanded to strike first to show strength. Scholars begged them to wait, warning that no known power could create energy fields like the ones now shaking their space. One scholar, older than all, spoke of the old archives. He whispered that once, long ago, Earth had built ships like no other. Ships built not only for war, but for survival against the void itself. His words silenced the council. Beyond their debates, the omen took shape. A mining colony orbiting a barren world saw it first. Miners looked out their station windows and froze. There, rising from the black sea of space, was a triangular shadow. It was vast, stretching further than any alien dreadnought, its hull layered in scars and metal plates that glowed faintly with hidden lights. It moved with slow, heavy grace, as if it did not need to hurry, as if all of space already belonged to it. The miners sent distress calls. Before the signals cut off, one final image was transmitted, a blurred view of the ship's surface. Along its sides, endless lines of light burned like stars trapped in its frame. The sight alone was enough to bring fear into the hearts of those who saw it. News of the sighting shook the galaxy. The whispers became screams. Kingdoms that had never bowed to anyone began to prepare defenses. Entire fleets stood ready in silence, their admirals staring at the stars, waiting for the shadow to fall upon them. But deep inside, they already knew. This was no ordinary warship. This was no rival empire's trick. This was the omen of something far greater. It was the sign that humanity had returned. The shadow finally broke through the silence of rumor and became real. For weeks, alien rulers had argued whether it was true, whether humanity could have survived across the centuries. But when the battleship entered the heart of known space, there was no more denying. The omen had arrived. It came without warning. No war drums, no message, no declaration of intent. One moment, the skies above the Sarath kingdom glittered with calm stars. The next, something vast blotted them out. A colossal wedge-shaped ship drifted from the void, its hull gleaming like frozen silver under distant suns. The Sarath fleet was the first to face it. 50 warships scrambled into formation, engines roaring, weapons ready. Their admirals shouted orders, demanding the intruder identify itself. No answer came. The human ship moved forward slowly, almost lazily, as if the fleet around it did not exist. The Sarath warships fired warning shots, streaks of plasma and missiles flashing through the dark, but when they struck the hull, nothing happened. The explosions vanished like sparks against an ocean. The human battleship did not fire back. It did not even raise shields, if it had any. It simply kept moving, silent, unstoppable. On the alien command decks, panic set in. "Increase firepower," admirals screamed. "Target its engines." Dozens of cannons lit the void, but the result was the same. Not even a dent. Not even a scratch. Then something stranger happened. The Sarath ships lost power. Not all at once, but one by one. Screens flickered, engines died, weapons froze. Crews cried out as their controls went dark. Ships drifted helplessly, their lights extinguished, leaving only the massive silhouette of the human vessel glowing faintly with cold white lines. The admirals begged their rulers for guidance. But what could they say? What could they order when their entire armada had been silenced without a single shot? The battleship glided past them, not bothering to finish them off. It treated them like insects too small to notice. Its course was steady, straight toward the capital of the Sarath kingdom. News of the encounter spread at light speed. Across the galaxy, other empires received fragments of desperate transmissions, alien voices crying out, "It is here. It does not stop. It does not fall." And then, silence. The sight of the ship created waves of terror unlike anything the galaxy had known. In the Archon Confederacy, entire cities rioted at the rumors. In the Veiled Dominion, their queen locked herself in her throne room, whispering the old warnings of Earth. Armadas from every empire gathered at their borders, not to fight one another, but to watch the stars where the ship was last seen. In the Sarath capital, the rulers gathered in their crystal halls, eyes fixed on the sky. The massive ship broke orbit, casting a shadow across their world. Its hull blocked out the sun, leaving whole regions in darkness. People fell to their knees in the streets, praying to whatever gods they knew. Children screamed as the ground trembled with the low hum of engines that no technology in the galaxy could match. Still, the ship did not fire. It hovered above the capital, silent, unyielding, watching. A single transmission reached the Sarath throne. The voice was human, deep and calm, echoing as if carried from centuries past. 4 words filled the chamber. "Earth has returned now. No threat, no promise, just a truth spoken in steel." The Sarath rulers froze. Their armies, their weapons, their power, none of it mattered now. The humans had come back, and their first act was not war, but presence. The presence itself was enough to crush every ounce of pride. Other empires listened too. The transmission spread, repeated in endless languages, carried through every channel the battleship chose. Every ruler, every soldier, every slave across the galaxy heard it, and everywhere the same reaction spread. Fear. In hidden chambers, rulers debated. Should they surrender? Should they fight? Could any fleet hope to stand against such a ship? Some clung to pride, saying humanity was only one world, one people, but even they trembled at the thought that if one ship could do this, what might happen if Earth sent more? The battleship remained in orbit for 3 long cycles. It did not speak again. It did not move. But its shadow stretched across the Sarath capital, across its oceans and skies. People stopped their daily lives. Whole cities lived in silence, waiting for destruction that never came. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the ship began to move. It rose higher into the void, its engines glowing brighter, and slipped back into the sea of stars. But it did not vanish. It was still there, moving slowly toward the next kingdom. The Sarath rulers collapsed in relief. But it was not true relief. Their empire had already been broken. Their fleets were useless. Their pride was gone. And now every other kingdom knew the same fate was coming for them. The omen was no longer a shadow. It was here. It had arrived. And the galaxy realized a truth more terrifying than any battle. Humanity did not need to conquer. Humanity only needed to appear. The galaxy had not known silence like this for centuries. Not even during its bloodiest wars had so many empires gone quiet at once. For 3 cycles, the human battleship drifted from one star system to another. It fired no weapons, yet every fleet that approached fell powerless. It sent no armies, yet whole planets surrendered before its shadow. The Seraph Kingdom was the first to bend. Their rulers, once proud and merciless, sent a message across every channel. We submit to Earth, we beg for mercy. It was a plea born not from honor, but from terror. They had seen the ship above their skies. They had felt its silence press upon them like a weight that could crush worlds. Other empires mocked them at first. The Veiled Dominion called them cowards, claiming no true power would bow so easily. But when the battleship shifted its course toward Veil space, the laughter died. Their fleets scrambled, their soldiers prepared, but the rulers who had called others weak soon found their voices breaking. The ship entered Veil territory with the same unstoppable calm. Armadas surrounded it, glowing with weapons primed for battle. But one by one their systems fell. Engines stuttered, shields collapsed, and weapons died before they could fire. A billion eyes watched as their proudest fleet drifted powerless around the human vessel. In desperation, the Vial Queen herself sent a transmission. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, shook as she spoke. We recognize Earth's might. We seek peace. We will give tribute anything if only Earth spares us. The battleship gave no reply. It moved on, leaving the Vial throne in silence, but her words echoed across the galaxy. From that moment, rulers began to compete, not for war, but for mercy. Messages poured into the void, desperate and trembling. Some promised resources, others offered fleets. Others even swore to place their crowns at humanity's feet. We will kneel. We will obey. We beg for salvation. The galaxy's proudest voices had become a chorus of pleading. In the shadowed chambers of the Archon Confederacy, their council gathered. 12 rulers sat around a table of stone, but none could meet the eyes of the others. They had built their empire through conquest, enslaving dozens of weaker races. Now their slaves whispered in the streets, hoping Earth would come and free them. One of the rulers, trembling, spoke the words the others feared. If we do not kneel, we will be broken. Another slammed his fist upon the table. We are Archon. We bow to no one. But his voice was hollow. Even as he spoke, the battleship's presence pressed into their minds. It had not fired, yet every empire knew that if it did, no world would remain. The council fell into silence, and silence was its own surrender. Meanwhile, across the stars, common people began to see the battleship not as a terror, but as something greater. In the mining colonies, slaves whispered prayers to Earth. In the marketplaces of conquered worlds, citizens looked to the skies with hope that the shadow would come to free them. To the weak, the ship was not a threat. It was a promise. The rulers felt this shift and feared it even more. Their power was built on control, on fear, on armies and chains. But now their own people looked to Earth as if humanity were a god returned from the dark. Finally, the largest council in galactic history was called. Rulers from 30 empires gathered in one chamber, carved upon a moon of the central systems. Never before had so many enemies sat in the same place. Their voices shook as they argued. We must unite. Only together can we survive. No fleet is strong enough. Then we must beg together. Perhaps they will listen. At last a decision was made. They would send one message, united. A single plea from all the thrones of the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the words were spoken into the void. Humanity of Earth. We surrender. We ask for mercy. We are ready to kneel. For days there was no answer. The battleship drifted, moving from one star to another, watching, waiting. The silence burned worse than any weapon. Whole empires held their breath, wondering if mercy would come or if destruction was already upon them. At last the reply came. The battleship's voice was calm, steady, unshaken. Your wars will end. Your chains will break. You will kneel not to Earth but to peace. Refuse and you will not survive. The word spread like fire. Across the galaxy, rulers collapsed into despair. Some cried, some cursed, but none defied. They had begged for mercy, and humanity had answered, not with fire, but with judgment. The pleas had been heard, and the galaxy knew now that begging would not save them from humanity's will. The galaxy held its breath. The message had been spoken. Earth demanded peace, demanded surrender, demanded chains be broken. But still some rulers clung to pride. In hidden chambers, voices rose in anger. "We cannot kneel to ghosts," shouted the warlord of the Kyr Dominion. "They are only one world, one ship. Do we fear shadows so much that we forget who rules the stars?" His words carried across his fleets, and many cheered them. But when the human battleship altered its course and drifted into Kyr space, the cheering died. The Dominion gathered every vessel it had, 2,000 warships, the largest armada in living memory. Their ships formed walls of steel across the black void, glowing with weapons primed to unleash storms of fire. Whole planets watched the sky, waiting for the clash that would decide their fate. The human ship slowed. It hung in the void like a blade, sharp and waiting. For the first time, the galaxy wondered, would Earth finally strike? The Dominion fired first. Thousands of cannons roared. Plasma fire, missiles, beams of energy. An ocean of destruction crashed against the human vessel. For minutes the void burned brighter than suns, but when the fire faded, the battleship still stood, untouched. Not a scratch marked its hull. Panic spread through the Dominion's armada. Captains screamed, engineers cried, but the human ship remained silent. Then slowly the battleship's hull glowed with new light. Lines of energy carved across its frame, bright and sharp, like veins of fire waking after centuries of sleep. Every ship in the Dominion froze. Then the test began. The battleship fired a single shot, not at the fleets, not at the planets. Its weapon turned instead toward a nearby asteroid belt, a wasteland of rock and ice stretching for thousands of kilometers. One beam cut through the void. It was silent, pure, white like burning starlight. In a heartbeat, the asteroid belt was gone. Rock, ice, and dust vaporized into nothingness. Where once there had been mountains of stone, there was now only an empty scar of glowing debris. The galaxy watched in horror. The Dominion fleets broke almost instantly. Crews abandoned their posts. Admirals dropped their weapons. Some ships powered down on their own, hoping silence would save them. The warlord who had shouted against fear now fell to his knees, trembling before the sight. But the human ship did not fire again. It had made its point. The message came once more, echoing across every channel in the Dominion and beyond. "Calm, steady, unshaken, we do not come to conquer. We do not come to burn your worlds. But if you break our command, if you choose war, your empires will vanish like dust. Choose peace. Choose surrender. This is your only chance." The words echoed like thunder, and this time no one doubted. On distant worlds, children cried as their parents fell silent, staring at the sky. Soldiers dropped their weapons, realizing nothing they carried could matter now. And in every throne room, rulers wept in fear, knowing pride had cost them everything. The Dominion surrendered within hours. Their fleets knelt, their warlord cast aside his crown, and their chains on conquered people shattered. What armies had never achieved, a single ship had demanded with one test of power. Other empires saw and bent even faster. Councils sent desperate messages before the battleship even reached their borders. Whole civilizations rushed to swear loyalty, promising obedience before the shadow could fall upon them. No one wanted to be the next example. But deep beneath the fear, something else stirred. The weak, the enslaved, the broken, they looked upon the ship with awe. For the first time in centuries, they saw their rulers humbled. They saw chains snapped, wars ended, voices freed. To them, the ship was not only judgment, it was hope. The galaxy had been tested, and it had failed. Not one empire could stand against the power of Earth. Not one throne could resist the will of humanity. And now all that remained was obedience, or destruction. The battleship moved on, leaving the Dominion in silence, its debris belt still glowing as a scar across the stars. Everywhere, rulers whispered in fear. Everywhere, citizens whispered in awe. The test had ended the debate. No one could deny humanity's place anymore. The only question left was this: what did Earth truly want? The galaxy was quiet again, but it was no longer the same silence. Before the battleship's arrival, silence had meant peace. Now silence meant fear. Every throne room, every council hall, every street and colony carried the same thought. Earth had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. The Dominion's surrender spread like fire. Their warlord, once feared across dozens of systems, now knelt before his people, crown cast aside, voice broken. Other rulers saw this and knew resistance was death. They sent envoys not with demands but with offerings. Riches poured into the void, gems mined from suns, technology crafted over centuries, even entire fleets gifted as tribute. But the battleship accepted none of it. It drifted on, silent and unbending, as if wealth and power were beneath its notice. To humanity, these treasures meant nothing. The ship had come for something greater, something the galaxy could not yet understand. In the lower worlds, where slaves had lived in chains for generations, whispers turned to cheers. Across mines and factories, workers looked up at the stars and felt hope stir in their hearts. To them, the battleship was not a terror but a savior. The silent shadow that had forced their rulers to kneel had also forced their chains to break. For the first time in centuries, the oppressed tasted freedom. The rulers knew this too, and it terrified them even more. The ship had not only humbled their fleets, it had shifted the balance of power in their own empires. Their people no longer looked to them for safety. They looked to Earth. The Council of 30, once so full of fear, now sat in silence. None dared to speak against humanity again. Instead, they waited, wondering what command would come next. Would Earth demand obedience forever? Would humans march armies through their capitals? Would the battleship begin its conquest? But the ship did none of those things. For weeks it drifted through the central systems, its massive shadow falling across golden palaces, glittering towers, and darkened battlefields. It spoke only once more, its voice carried through every channel, every world, every corner of the galaxy. Your wars are ended. Your chains are broken. Do not make us return. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the ship turned away. Its engines lit with silent fire, and it began to vanish into the stars. Panic spread again. Some rulers screamed for it to stay, to accept their tribute. Others prayed it would never come back. And in the streets, ordinary people cried out, begging for it to remain as their guardian. But the ship did not answer. It slipped deeper into the void, its lights fading like a dying sun until only darkness remained. For days, the galaxy watched the skies, waiting for it to return. But the battleship did not come back. It had left, leaving only silence and the memory of its shadow. That silence became legend. Across the stars, people spoke of it as if it were a god that had judged them. Children grew up hearing the story of the battleship that turned empires to dust with a single beam. Soldiers whispered of it before battle, knowing no weapon could match its power. Slaves carved its name into the walls of mines, remembering the day their chains fell. The galaxy changed. Wars between empires ceased almost overnight, not because rulers had grown wiser, but because fear of Earth kept them frozen. No fleet dared to rise against another, for all feared that if the galaxy returned to chaos, the battleship would return too. For generations, the shadow of Earth remained. Even without a single human present, even without armies or fleets, humanity ruled the stars through silence. Their power was not in conquest, but in the memory of what one ship had done. But beneath that fear, curiosity grew. Scholars across the empire studied old records, desperate to understand how Earth had built such power. Some whispered that if humanity had one ship, it must have more. Others feared that if Earth chose to rise again, the galaxy would not survive. On the smaller worlds, among the freed and the hopeful, another belief spread. They whispered that humanity had not left forever, that one day when the galaxy forgot its lesson, Earth would return, not as conquerors but as judgment once again. In the end, it was not destruction that humanity left behind. It was something stronger. It was a story, a legend that would never die. The galaxy would never forget the sight of that colossal wedge of steel drifting through their skies, silent and unchallenged. They would never forget the words that shook their thrones. And they would never forget the test that erased an asteroid belt like dust. The battleship had left, but its shadow lived on, and in every palace, every market, every ship drifting through the stars, the same thought lingered. What if it comes back?